That's how it goes.
Have you read? I think I got you to read this. Squirrel Girl takes on the Marvel Universe, or Squirrel Girl defeats the Marvel Universe.
Yes, yeah, I got that. That's on my bookshelf. I'd gotten that on discount and loved it. And yes,
because she defeats Thanos. I was gonna say Thor. Thanos, right?
If I remember correctly, it's been a while, but I think it was Galactus.
Same thing.
But I'll forgive you because you wouldn't know the difference.
I do.
That's pulling out some real knowledge. That's impressive. Wow.
Yeah, the knowledge is there. Yeah. So I'm excited.
In love with movies, in love, in love,
Danny and Nick.
in love with movies. Da da da.
Hello, movie lovers, and welcome to In Love with Movies. I'm Nick.
And I'm Danny.
And this is the podcast where we do what, Danny?
We talk about love and movies.
That's pretty much right in the name. It's a pretty good, way to do things. It's right where it is. Unlike the field of IO psychology, the name of our podcast does a good job describing exactly what it is. IO psychology, and you see some of our guests are chuckling at this, maybe doesn't do that good of a job at it. But we on In Love with Movies are happy to be joined today by some colleagues in that field that I know of.
Oh, is that why you said IO psychology? Very natural. I didn't.
It wasn't forced at all. Anyway, we have Gordon Schmidt, Dr. Gordon Schmidt, and Dr. Sai Islam. Thank you both for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here.
And they are here to talk with today about their friendship. I honestly don't know many of these details. It'll be truly an opening experience for me. I've communicated with each of them to some degree, but I don't know much about how they got to know each other. But they are here plugging a book, which is part of the reason we're having them on today. So movie lovers, you'll want to stay tuned, because I think that even if you don't like IO psychology, and even if you're someone who hates every time I bring it up on this podcast, and even if you couldn't care less what it is, you might find yourself interested in this book. So, Sai, Gordon, what is the title of your book? And give us sort of a quick, back of the book blurb about what it is.
Sure, I can do that. So our book is Leaders Assemble, Leadership Lessons from the MCU. And so this book basically tries to teach empirically supported leadership concepts through Marvel superhero movies. And so each chapter talks about things like servant leadership, shared leadership, conflict, stress. And we look at the Marvel movies and talk about how they're examples of this and how they can help us to learn and get better as a leader. And so it really fits with some stuff Sai and I've been doing research on in general, is this idea of how do I get our field of IO psychology out there for people to use and understand versus put it in a journal and no one ever hears about it, or just let, random charlatans on LinkedIn take care of it, right? Like that's just, we need to make sure the right information gets out there. And so Sai and I thought, hey, an engaging, interesting topic like the Marvel movies, and we love the comic books. We love the movies. Why don't we use this as a way for people to understand this stuff? And it was an excuse to watch Marvel movies at length as well, which is never bad. So that's kind of the setup of the book. And so we're not analyzing the characters and what they're like. We're using the characters to teach you about these topics. And then you can reflect, how can I be, a servant leader like Captain America? That maybe Captain America will come up later in this show. Who knows?
Spoiler alert.
Well, I think that's super cool because I'm just going to say it. I don't care about IO psychology that much.
You and my wife would get along.
And my own wife.
Well, maybe not that I don't care. I think it's important. Let me backtrack. But I hear about it a lot, and I'm not super interested. But if you put Marvel in front of me, then I might be a little bit more interested. So I think that's super cool. So thank you for making these books for haters like me.
Or we make Marvel really boring, just like I
Maybe. Yeah, that could be. So Nick, I'm glad that you also have a wife that finds IO psychology maybe not the most interesting. My wife is a clinical psychologist, so she watches all the Marvel movies with me, but she doesn't want to talk about IO psychology with me all the time. So
My wife doesn't like either side. She doesn't like Marvel movies and she doesn't like IO. So
wow,
this book is not making her excited. But you know.
I feel you there. We may or may not have had the discussion, and movie lovers, we will be watching Captain America: First Avenger. I do normally like to say that, but we do skip ahead. That's the movie that we're reviewing today. My wife discovered while watching it with us this time, it was definitely the first time that she had ever seen it. Because it had been well before we met each other, and while I think she has had to be seeing every Marvel movie since we've been together,
it's a requirement, yeah.
This would have been before our time, so very much in that same boat. She would not be there if I was not dragging her, kicking and screaming. So, Gordon, you're in good company as well.
you need to read those marriage contracts very carefully.
I keep adding addendums. Yeah. So, well, that's good. That's fantastic. Well, then. I was going to ask you all to pitch it to somebody who doesn't care about IO Psych. I feel like you did that a little bit, but is there anything else you would add? Like, let's say I'm like Danielle. Maybe I like movies. Maybe I like Marvel movies. Maybe I'm okay with them. But I definitely have no interest in leadership styles or anything along those lines, or learning about the science of the IO psychology. Why might I want to pick up your book?
Well, I think the biggest reason is to kind of learn to be a better leader, regardless of whether you're actually interested in the theory or whether you're interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think everybody wants to be a better leader, and given the current events in the United States right now, we need better leaders, and I think people are looking for those better leaders. And I think our book does a great way of like explaining what it means to be a great leader through these very accessible examples in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's easy to kind of imagine, well, what makes Iron Man a great leader? Or what is it about, Spider-Man that makes him an interesting leader? Or what makes Charles Xavier a great leader? And to watch the movie, then you can kind of, look at it and say, wait a minute, here's some things that I can do in my own life. And that way you're not burdened with the nerdiness of like, oh, I have to watch 15 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so that I understand anything that's happening. And you don't have to read through the very exciting IO psychology research that all of us love to read. But instead, you can just take the best parts of both and kind of develop yourself as a leader.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well. I think engaging examples are so important for us to be leaders because I think we get a lot of bad examples and things that aren't connected to us. So we talk about leadership as a process, the process of influence of others. And it's not just CEOs or CEOs on Twitter telling us what to do or what to think, right? It is us influencing others, affecting our lives and having impact. And so the book really takes that perspective that we can all have impact. We can all be leaders and engage in this leadership process, this process of influence. And so I think, and that's what I think is really great about the Marvel movies too, is the Marvel movies aren't, oh, we got the one CEO we all listen to and do what they say, right? It's not like that at all. All these people are heroes in their own right. They're all very talented. They all got very different opinions and way of doing things. And sometimes they bug the hell out of each other. And sometimes they can't work together. But that's a lot closer to the real world than what we see kind of in these things of just copy the 7 things Jack Welch did in 1985, right? Even if those things work, which is not what I would say probably, they're not going to necessarily apply, and you need your workforce to feel that way about you. And you're probably not the CEO of GE in the 80s, unless this is a weird time travel thing that I'm unaware of. And so we're living day to day influencing people that we're not the big boss that everyone looks up to. If anyone looks up to the big boss anymore anyways, or they ever really did other than breathless articles in Forbes or whatever, And so I think that's part of it, is thinking about how emergent leaders and people engaging in leadership. And so it's useful for anybody. You can be a student, you can be a CEO, you can be just a regular person trying to influence, your family to do stuff. Which is a lot harder often than
that, Gordon, because I don't think I've ever thought about that with regards to the MCU movies of like, there is no big boss. Early on, I think they kind of were starting to set up Nick Fury to be that, but then even with sort of the second Captain America,
Yeah.
onward, like that already starts to become something that's questioned. So I think that's a really good point, and I totally agree, obviously, with the lesson about influence and leadership in other places. You seem like you got tickled by some ideas.
Oh, because he said you can use it to influence your friends or your family.
Yeah.
That's
Useful.
exciting.
It is, yeah. You can definitely use it. I think the other great thing about the MCU is there's such a wide range of hero types. And one of the things we see in research literature quite often is, especially when it comes to diversity, that if people from diverse backgrounds don't see themselves as leaders, it's hard for them to see that path. We see that with women, with minorities, LGBTQ, but there's so many heroes to choose from in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that it's kind of cool to be able to say, well, you know, I like Black Panther. I would love to be a leader like him. Or I like Black Widow, and I think I could be a leader like her. That really opens the world up, and it really opens up that conversation about who can be a leader and what a leader actually is. So I think that's, you know, a wonderful thing. And sometimes when I'm teaching, I see that with my students, that sometimes they can't envision themselves. I'll never forget. I had one student tell me in an intro undergraduate IO psychology class. She told me that men should be leaders. And I kind of looked at her. I was like, I never encountered that opinion from a young lady before. I was like, well, why do you think that? She's like, well, they seem to be in charge and things are going okay. So, you know, let them be in charge. I was like,
Things are going okay.
I might disagree with the second part of the statement.
That was the past.
this is a long time ago. This is like 7 years ago. So,
well, and also I do think that there's something to that, and it doesn't surprise me, Sai, of like, it's not even whether you think things are going okay or not. It's like, okay, so the world isn't quite literally burning. Maybe it wasn't 7 years ago at the very least. But just the idea of like, well, I've never seen anything else. So why would I think that there's anything other than men to be leaders if I've literally never seen anything else?
Exactly.
White men.
Yeah, more specifically and more often. But so the idea of different, but not only different faces, but also different styles, I think are even more represented in the MCU.
And they're making more, right? They just introduced, well, the movies just introduced America Chavez. Latina and
that's true. Yep.
And who else? You were excited about another one that's coming on the Disney Plus shows.
She-Hulk?
Yes, and you might be. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, but yes.
Who?
Oh, is she going to remember?
I have COVID, guys. It's not working very well. What?
I thought you have expressed excitement for Miss Marvel since you've seen her in some other stuff.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there we
and
go.
if they make a Squirrel Girl movie or TV show,
they're trying.
So pumped for that.
Squirrel Girl is the biggest deficiency in MCU right now, frankly.
Agreed.
Like,
Yes.
I like Namor, and I'm very excited that the Submariner is going to be in something, but he ain't as important as Squirrel Girl and Roll, you know. Although it sounds like they're doing some cool stuff based on what I saw, but Squirrel Girl would be fantastic to do.
They almost made a Squirrel Girl show. They tried to do it, and I was pretty pumped that they were going to bring her in, but she's such a fan favorite character. I'm a little surprised that they haven't tried to bring her in already, and she's so much fun.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen Howard the Duck for 3 seconds at least, you know.
That's true.
So it's hard to believe Squirrel Girl is not here when Howard the Duck shows up.
Like, okay, so let's get a little bit into you all's relationship with each other, the whole sort of quote unquote love. We love all forms of love here on this podcast. Including, you know, non-romantic love. I think that you all probably, hopefully, have to have at least some level of love for each other
Are
to
you
be able
gonna
to write
make
a whole
them
book.
like?
Oh, absolutely.
The correct term is bromantic love.
There you go. Yes,
Yeah, so-
romantic love.
Bros are problematic, though. So
I agree.
I think you could. I could be wrong. I think you could
Aren't we
have
problematic, Gordon?
without
Aren't we?
being a bro.
there's some type of Greek love that fits us perfectly because they have like 4,000 different types. And there's some that
That's true.
definitely do not fit and should not be mentioned, probably. But I don't know. I don't know the word for it.
Oh. Well, since we don't have the Greek nomenclature, let's stick with our term bromance. So tell us the tale of you all's bromance. How did you first meet? How did it lead to eventually you writing this book together? And what was that process like for the two of you?
So I think you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, because this is like the dating game, by the way, where I'm not going to remember anything, and Gordon's going to put up these like placards with all different answers. Like, I'm going to learn today that REO Speedwagon is like his favorite band or something. You know, so I think we met because I had applied to a job at Purdue Fort Wayne, and you know, I flew out there, we interviewed, and then I didn't take the job. But then we we stayed in touch. Was it through Twitter that we stayed in touch after that?
Yeah. So I think we were like following each other on Twitter, knew each other like slightly. Yeah. And then you came out, and that's kind of how I knew you better when you'd come out for that job talk. And then I think we were just talking on Twitter. I know we at one of the PSYOPs, you know, we met for lunch or something. Yeah. And then really started to talk about like IO outreach and stuff, which is something we've written on quite a bit, is just kind of how do you get the word out there? And so we did like a commentary at PSYOPs Journal related to that went pretty well. This idea of IO psychologists as testers and debunkers of management practice, right? And so I think that was kind of the first thing we kind of worked on and started talking on. And sort of started some research based on that. We did a few projects with other Twitter people too. There's a bunch of funny stories with that, the things we did for the IO psychologist, like Bo Armstrong came up with an idea on the bus and posted about it, about the search rates for IO psychology. And then a bunch of us ended up talking about it through Twitter and wrote a paper on it, you know. So really it's a very online, you know, sort of relationship building to a significant degree, of sort of through Twitter, and sort of ultimately, you know, Ty and I, we just do direct messages all the time on stupid things. I probably bug Ty because I'll be like I was watching episode 2 and I'm just sending him messages about how stupid various elements of episode 2 of Star Wars.
I was just saying, we're talking
because I'm getting ready for Obi-Wan, but I really should not have watched the prequel trilogy because I hate the prequel trilogy so much. It just seems so bad compared to the original one. So Dimitri and I, my son, we watched the original trilogy. Empire is fantastic, just to let you know. Empire Strikes Back, not even from a nostalgia basis, it's just amazing. And then we started the Return of the Jedi's got its issues, but it's still kind of fun. Episode 1, I don't know. Dimitri was crying. I was crying.
Yeah, I have a question.
You know.
Isn't he 4 months old, you said?
4 months old. He's crying regardless, so it's not affected by the movie.
He was watching. I love that you said you guys were watching it together. Okay, continue.
You think our children aren't going to be exposed to Star Wars before the age of 4 months?
This is what you do at 4 a.m. while feeding, is you watch rolls him to sleep, you know, in an hour, and sometimes he likes it. We watched Rescue Rangers, which was fantastic recently.
Pro tip, you can watch Avatar The Last Airbender, which is what my son was exposed to.
We watched
also, you know, What We Do in the Shadows, which may not have been age appropriate. This is my wife is going to find out about what was exposed to at 3 months. You know,
I'm not worried about it, honestly. Age appropriate, but maybe I should be more.
This is a long-term study about pop culture exposure to, you know, children.
So I send Cy all these messages about the comics I'm reading and stuff, and make fun of it. He's got a million screenshots of random comics I read in stupid panels from the first like 70 issues of 50 issues of the Avengers are horrible, just like poorly written. And so it's just me like trash talking it, and it gets better, but it's Stan Lee's like Z-Crade work. I don't know. The Kirby art's okay for a while. I probably shouldn't say how bad the Avengers are.
Some of that because you sent us you sent a screenshot earlier today. I'm now enjoying this as well. I shared it with Danielle. The image of, if you all read comics, movie lovers, if you're listening to this, you may read comics occasionally. They do ads that look like comics, but it was like from Golden Age, I think it was probably, or no, it was later.
No. Yeah, it's actually from the 70s. The 70s were really big.
And it was a Twinkies article that I showed it to Danny because I was like, this is that Red Skull character from the movie. This is what he's supposed to look like in the comics. And it is bad. It is very bad.
Yeah, no, there's these Hostess cake ones and the Twinkie people where it's basically a superhero can't fight the villain and beat them. but then they like bust out their like fruit pies or Twinkie, and then the guy who sometimes is just some random dude, and sometimes it's the Red Skull with a cosmic cube that can alter reality, gets so distracted by the Twinkies like he gets defeated. But yeah, they were big in the 70s and early 80s, and so yeah, I was looking at this comic from the 70s again, and it's just it's madness.
Still not the wildest thing that's happened in comics. Like these hostess ads could actually be added to continuity very easily, and you wouldn't see any difference.
Wouldn't bat an eye, yeah.
Thanos Pop was interesting though.
Danielle was writing me a little message saying, is this their first book? Correct me if I'm wrong. This is you all's first book together, correct? You've written articles before, but you okay? That's what I thought.
Yeah,
so
it's our first book. I did a book, an edited volume of Richard Landers on social media and selection before, but it's the first book that I've written. The whole thing with somebody else. So. Our friendship is just it's all virtual, man. I don't know. It's crazy overall. Like maybe I don't even know. Is it even a couple psyops? Like I think
it was only two. At most two. Two at most. Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is that you can build relationships on any platform, and that I think is one of the big lessons from not just the friendship I have with Gordon, but with other IO Twitter people. The IO Twitter community is really cool, and I remember I want to say Dr. Lisa Kath mentioned this to me once, that like Twitter is a cesspool, but I don't know how you're able to make good relationships out of it. And I'm like, a lot of it is the energy you're putting out there. I don't post a lot of negative stuff. I'm mostly just kind of having fun. And I think if we're having fun in those relationships, you can kind of find people that you vibe with. Like Gordon and I have a lot of like, shared interests, and we both like really corny jokes. We were doing dad jokes before we became parents, so there's a lot of commonality. And if you use social media platforms for that, then I think you can get a lot of benefit from it. And people are building virtual relationships now anyway, especially during the pandemic. If you didn't have that capability of maintaining relationships with people, virtually, it just made things harder. But, there's more options and more ways of communicating. Like you can do Twitter DM, you can do Slack. I have a Slack group with my old grad school friends. I have way too many WhatsApp groups. Where my parents and various family members send us like random things, and so you can use any of these platforms. I think the biggest lesson is also that like Gordon and I we care about research too. We like doing research. We have some similar interests, and we found a way to kind of work together that functions for us. And luckily, we're able to use all the stuff we know from IO. To kind of have that functional working relationship. It doesn't really work that well with like romantic relationships. I mean, you don't really want to do performance reviews. I mean, wait, Nick, do you give performance reviews to your wife? You give okay. I should have known.
Definitely the boss. It's not a 360 situation. It is a one-way street.
One-way
influence. Okay, I appreciate that.
I would say if we want to talk about a metaphor, I kind of feel like this is like that. It's kind of like the Rescue Rangers movie just came out on Disney Plus.
We watched it.
It was good.
Very specific. If you got a specific age band, specific interest band, you're just like, that movie was great. I think of it related to these things that I liked. And so I think to some degree, like Cy and I, we've got this shared band of interest and some of the same humor, and that really helps. But I do think like a lot of the community online with IO and things is kind of there, that weird thing you're interested or you care about that's specific, and it's the band that allows you to happen. You're the one who's interested in seeing, Ugly Sonic in the Rescue Rangers movie. You're interested in seeing Batman versus E.T., type stuff. There's just I hope the Rescue Rangers movie does well because all these references will be dated by the time this episode comes out. Probably. It's
I
like-
How many Disney Plus products will we promote during this one podcast?
I'm going to be
Sponsored by-
sponsored by Disney Plus. Throwing it out there, Disney Plus. If you listen,
Please.
I mean, I would happily put a commercial in every single one of our episodes for that, and even just for a free subscription because we use it more than enough. But going off of you all's connection and your shared
Logical progression.
experience, why don't we go ahead and segue into our next segment, Closer Through Science. And Danielle, what is Closer Through Science?
Great, thank you for asking. This is it's a research study that I think you guys like research and studies. So it's by Aaron et al. I've learned how to say that. That means there's more people.
There we go.
And it's a research study that's done by just asking strangers these questions, and then scientifically they get closer together at the end of the study. And this was also seen in a lot of movies and TV, like The Big Bang Theory, how Penny and Sheldon get closer together. So we always ask our guests some questions so we can get closer to you. And like Nick said earlier, we're running low on questions. So the more you get down the list, the deeper they are.
Okay.
Hello?
All right. Well, back to Closer Through Science, though.
Oh, yeah. My very serious topic I was talking about with Aaron et al.
Very good. Very good. We really appreciate that. I tried to pick one that I think that you two will be able to answer, and maybe even answer quickly with some humor if you want to. So be as deep or as prolonged as you wish, but we will ask each of you to answer this. And movie lovers, please share your answers to these questions using the hashtag Closer Through Science on social media platforms to let us know so we can all get closer together. But Sai and Gordon, of all of the people in your family, whose death would you find most disturbing and why?
Yikes.
Wow.
This is the least difficult.
I
Now,
think this is a fun time, and they can't already be dead, right?
so,
Correct.
so
Got some
quick question:
Answer how
Am
you
I
know.
the one who killed them?
Was it your
That's-
fault?
That depends on how you interpret the question. That is part of getting to know each other, is how you choose to intake, digest, and then regurgitate the answer to this question.
Most disturbing. I gotta say, once you become a dad, I think that spot gets taken up pretty quickly by your kid. Actually, I will say this. So, just because I think this is interesting. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. In terms of like death, and being disturbed by death. Definitely, if it was a family member, definitely my son. But there is something in, as kind of as a religious Muslim, one thing that you kind of come to terms with, and this is also maybe a Zen Buddhist idea as well, is like you don't really own anything, and you don't really, nothing truly belongs to you. So like you think that my kid is my kid, I'm going to be able to keep him safe all the time, and they're never going to interrupt me during podcast appearances. You think all of these things, but really, you only have your children, you only have your family members for a certain amount of time. Like you don't even control when you get to check out. So what that does is it imbues like everything when you think about that often enough that like, oh, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I'm not sure, when I'm going to lose these people. It makes your relationships a lot deeper. And I do reflect on that a lot. And so I try, that actually helps me to kind of like, be a better husband and be a, don't ask my wife about my husband quality at this point. And to be a better, better dad, maybe, at least be a mediocre son, so those things, I think that actually helps. And that's something that like thinking about that question, and the impact that the loss of somebody has is I think really important. So definitely that would be the person that would devastate me the most. But I also have to kind of come to terms with that fact that, I thought about this the other day. I dropped off my son at daycare the other day, and I was like, this is right after what happened in Texas. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, something like that could happen. I'm gonna, trust that everything's gonna be okay, but understand that things may not be okay at the end of the day. So,
Dang.
God, depressing.
Yeah, you took it deep. But
That was a good answer, though.
yeah,
It had a little bit of hope in it.
Just a smidge, you know.
Gordon, did you
well,
want to answer?
yeah, I'll answer. Sai apparently copied my notes, which is not great. Because I was going to mention his son, and now that's just but no, I would say my son Dimitri. There's a book. Michael Lewis did a book called Home Game about him becoming a father, and one of the things he talks about in that is this idea of, when he used to get on a plane, he'd be like, well, if the plane goes down and I die, my wife will just marry somebody hotter than me. Everything will be fine. But once he had a son, he's like, how is my son going to be able to live and succeed, if I die? And I really feel that way, especially with Dimitri being 4 months old. It's just like, him dying would be very devastating in a lot of ways, because there's no way not to feel culpable in some way. Like, I don't, people have their life and do things, but especially an infant is so dependent on you. It feels we don't have control. We only have some levels of control, but it feels like, that's how our minds are set up, right? We have control. We have our destiny. If somebody in your family's like, oh, I'm not going to get necessary treatment, and they're an adult, you say, well, I might disagree and I might be sad, but it's your call. But with a kid, it's kind of is your call, right? Like, especially at a young age, it's your call one way or the other when we don't have certainty, right? And I know I've talked to some dads on this, the idea of, checking to make sure your kid's still breathing when they're sleeping and stuff. And this happens to me overnight all the time, is he'll be fussing and I'll be like, I don't want to get up and do something. And then he'll stop. Then I'll be like, I should probably go check. And it's just a weird thing where you're like, well, even if there's a very small chance, should you check? Because if you didn't check, you'd feel so bad, you'd feel so sad, you'd feel so culpable, which is difficult. I think that's something I've been thinking about, belief in a just world recently, where I think it can lead to a lot of bad things where you justify, these people deserved what happened. And we hear that in various ways, not directly stated, but kind of in a lot of these things. If somebody else screwed up, it's their fault, right? But I think that the nice thing about belief in a just world is you feel like, well, my kid's not going to die of SIDS, or my kid's not going to get shot because the world is just, and I'm a good person. Well, we can all be as good at people as we want. And that doesn't mean tragedy is not going to hit us, right? And I think that's that's a difficult thing. And I think with an infant and a child, it's even more the case. He's not making the choice to do something stupid. It's just, where they're at in development. We're the people who are keeping him going in that type of way. So that would be my answer. So I feel like it's basically the same as size. So feel free to edit it out and just dub his over mine.
That won't happen. But I do appreciate both.
This is why we're friends, by the way. I think this is part of the reason that we're friends, because we have like similar answers to these deep questions.
Yeah, I told Kai he can always use my anecdotes on any podcast he's on. So I don't know if he's used these yet,
just put them off as his own.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, that's my life.
I swear. No, well, thank you both very much. Like I said, I was trying to give a small opportunity, but I really appreciate, I think, the deeper stuff, and I probably foolishly saw that as maybe an easy joke because I don't have kids, and I wasn't thinking about that, but I know that there are some parents who listen to this show and will probably appreciate that even on a level that I cannot, at least as of yet. But yeah, thank you both very much for that deep conversation. I want to give us at least one more plug of your book before we move on to the second half of our podcast. So one more time, why don't one of you give us the name and the other tell us when it releases and where they can find it.
All right, I'm good with the name. So our book is called Leaders Assemble, Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when does it come out, Gordon?
I knew the title, but I think June 7th, 2022. So just coming up very soon. And it is available wherever Books are sold online, so it's available on Amazon. It's on Emerald's site. We found it on Walmart.com. I didn't really know they did stuff like that. But also most booksellers, it's out there to pre-order, both in there's Kindle version, electronic, and physical book.
And I have already ordered my Kindles, and I'm expecting to be able to use this broadcast voice when you guys do the Audible version. So you've got.
I'd love for us to do an Audible version. We'll definitely keep your name around for that time.
Write it down somewhere. All right. Well, with that, then we're going to go to a quick break, movie lovers, and when we come back, we are going to be discussing what movie?
Captain America.
America?
Specifically the first one, First Avenger.
I thought it was
All right.
America. I was wrong, I guess. Watch the
World Police.
In love with movies. Da da da.
And we're back.
My inhale was so loud.
That
since
was
Nick has
very
the microphone.
loud.
So
Okay, oh my goodness.
and we're
Can never
back.
get the levels right. Can never get the levels right.
All right, Nick.
What are we here to talk about today, Danny?
We're gonna talk about Captain America.
The First Avenger.
Sorry, the first one.
Captain America, the First Avenger. So this movie lovers, that's the movie we're going to be talking about today. We're going to hear the story of why Cy and Gordon picked it for us in a minute. But just before we get going with things so that you all are on the same page, if you haven't watched this movie before, it is available on Disney Plus as well as many other streaming services at this time. So if you have that Disney Plus sub, you can go ahead and grab it there. It is, of course, starring Chris Evans, came out in 2011. Also have the gorgeous and talented Haley Atwell playing Peggy Carter. Some people may or may not know Hugo Weaving from The Matrix. He's playing our friend the Red Skull. This is written by Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely. The only thing I knew them from was other MCU movies. So if you all know them from anything, you might know them from that. Director Joe Johnston, which I thought was interesting. And I think I knew this at some point in the past, but when I was preparing for this, I saw also directed October Sky and the movie The Rocketeer. If movie lovers are of my age, and I'm seeing Gordon, Cy, yes.
Yep.
You guys know this movie. You I knew my wife would not know this movie. If you know that about it, this director, you're like, oh, it makes sense why they were picked for Captain America, because the Rocketeer has a very sort of similar aesthetic. I thought we should give a shout out to Toby Jones, who does a great job as Zola, Dr. Zola, as well as Tommy Lee Jones, and the wonderful, the beautiful, the amazing Stanley does a phenomenal job as well. So that's just some generic opening credits, as well as Alan Silvestri does the score, which is a beautiful, beautiful score.
I do want to mention that Chris Evans, this is his second Marvel character. So he played the Human Torch in the early Fantastic Four movies, and he and Michael Chiklis are basically the best parts of those movies.
I would agree with that.
You know, so definitely he's got his MCU pedigree, and all your favorite character actors are in there. Stanley Tucci, Hugo Weaving. You can stand whoever you like.
This is also based on a book, a comic book called Captain America.
Comic book.
You're right. I should have given appropriate credit. You all know.
And I thought it was a real book.
Is it Stan Lee or is it just Stan Lee in terms of creating Captain America? You all might know.
Stanley didn't create Captain America.
Yeah, it's Joe
Jack
Simon.
Kirby and Joe Simon.
And Joe, yep.
Thank you very much, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. I knew I was going to miss something.
Is that why Stan Lee is not in this movie?
He is.
Oh,
that might be part of it.
It's a good. Stan takes credit for everything. To be fair, he did a lot of things, but he takes credit for everything historically. So
and for a lot of it, nobody's been there to argue with him.
R.I.P. You guys.
It was a long time.
Can I? I have to. Okay, Hugo Weaving. I didn't know that was this guy's name, and I can't stop chuckling at how good of a drag name that would be, or Hugo Girl. Hugo Girl.
Can I ask why would that be such a? I don't know anything about drag, so I'm interested in learning why that would be such a great drag name.
Yes, drag names are a lot of times puns on stupid things. So for example, now I'm not going to think of any drag queen names that are puns. Bag of chips.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
Courtney Act is an Australian drag queen. Caught in the act. Caught in the act. I just think Hugo Girl. That would be hilarious.
Hugo Weaving.
Hugo dancing.
You know, weaving.
You gotta weave. You gotta weave. Huge weaving, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, sorry. Sidetrack.
Anyway, we'll see. This is a perfect example of why it's always a good thing that people may need to for the opening credits, though, because I totally missed some important details and gave credit where credit was not due. Cite your sources, everyone.
Stanley already did it, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's Kirby and Simon 1935 or something. That's the APA style citation for the creation of Captain America.
Was it really written in the 30s?
Well, he punches Hitler during World War II very often. So
I think 35 is too early, but
35 is too early. It's probably 38, right? 39 maybe?
I don't have Google, so
no, I
only use Bing, and they'll never find it.
This is gonna have to get edited out because we're gonna be like, how do you not know when Captain America was first published?
I am going to try to look it up while we have Danielle giving her favorite segment of our movie lovers.
It's not my favorite segment.
Ouch.
So now that you all know the opening credits, we're going to hear a brief summary of what this movie is about through the eyes of Dani. Everyone's favorite segment. It's time for Dani's Dingle.
Time for Dani's Dingle.
All right. A UFO. 1942? What is this body? Father Stark. Oh, that's Peggy Carter. Cap has heart. Stanley Tucci. I'm starting to do his accent right there. Hail Hydra. Red face. The red face ripped it up. The red face. Stark and Shield. Whoa. Peggy is great. Peggy's the best, honestly. I forgot about all the things in the movie. Hitler, but not Hitler. But the war.
Hitler doesn't actually
The war. And Frozen. That was very bad.
Let it go. This has been a little bit longer because we had some delays due to COVID. Normally, there's a shorter time period between when Dani has to watch the movie and when she has to come.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did y'all wrong. That was a bad dingle. All right.
Best dingle ever. Everyone loves it. All right. Well, just to close out our citations, it was Simon and Kirby, 1941. So it was in fact in the
which is in the movie. It's 1942. So there, I should have known.
All right. Well, with that, then we're going to move on to finding out from Gordon and Cy what their love story with this movie is. So, what's you all's history with it? Why did you pick it? What is your tale?
So I think I'm the one that pushed for this movie. Is that correct? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So yes. Okay. So number one, I love Captain America. My brother gave me a bunch of his comic books, and that's how I got into comics. And he had a ton of Captain America and the Falcon. So you know, I grew up reading a lot of those. But I also kind of pushed for this one because this movie has maybe the MCU's best love story. And since this podcast is all about love, I was like, oh, we gotta talk about Peggy and Steve, because they're a love story that carries over into
all the way
Avengers, all the way through the end of like phase 3. So,
but also Steve and Bucky.
Also Steve and Bucky, yes,
well.
yes.
You don't
also
know which type. Some Greek type, probably.
Some Greek. It's a bromance, So
maybe more.
Maybe. Yeah, there's always potential for more. But I definitely thought that this was a really good, good example of the MCU. I like the kind of classical approach to the movie because Joe Johnston is directing, and there's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about in this movie. So I think that was why I pushed for it. Gordon, why did you accept this as a choice?
And why did you hesitate?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an interesting movie to talk about here. I do agree with a lot of those elements that Cy said. It's also one of the early movies in this whole thing, and I feel like those movies are really interesting now because they hit a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I felt with this movie is like it's very hard to judge is Chris Evans a good Captain America because he has been a good Captain America across 4,000 movies since this movie. And so it's really interesting to see this. And this is when we see like the World War II era. which sometimes does get neglected in modern Marvel because it's very inconvenient that all these things happen in the 40s. When this happened in the comics, right? He disappears in theory in the late 40s, in the mid 40s, and then he's back 16 years later in the 60s. So he's like, everyone I know is kind of older by 20 years. Not that he doesn't wince a lot in the comics on it. So it's really interesting to think about it now where it's a long time, right? It's like 70 years later or something, as I think Nick Fury says. And so it was really interesting for them to kind of look at this period because in the comics, it keeps getting kicked forward. Cy and I have talked about that, where Nick Fury is going to, because Nick Fury in the comics was around in World War II. He was fighting in World War II and then got a formula of extended life. So while Cap was frozen for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years or whatever it is based on continuity, Nick Fury was doing his job, I guess, for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And Namor the Submariner was, I guess, angry or lost his memory for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know. So Cap gets to just sleep the whole time. It's like when everyone else is taking care of something, you wake up and you're like, oh, the baby made a big mess. You were asleep the whole time. You didn't have to worry about it. You just slept, man. It went great. So it's interesting, because we haven't really looked at that era in the movies again, too. This World War II compared to modern MCU.
Made it better because I don't know, I like the historical aspect of it, and I said to you, I was like, there wasn't all the CG fighting, boom, kicky, explode. There was obviously some, but I think it made it more enjoyable. I really like this movie, and this is the first time I watched it apparently, and I truly thought I saw it.
Well, what did you think about what parts of the movie do you really like?
I love that Captain America has heart. I think this is the development of his personality, where some of and maybe I missed a lot of movies earlier on, but a lot of them I'm like, where'd that come from? Or they're just very one note, where Cap truly was like, yo, I'm a real good guy. I'm going to jump on a grenade. And also I love this woman and I want to come back for her. And then he does. And you know what? Seeing this movie makes that scene so much harder.
You mean the end game scene where they get to dance with each other?
Yeah.
We got to it and I realized oh, I remember when we watched Endgame together and I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God, I finally got to be back with her. And
who happened?
Why do you care? What's going on? And then we got to the end of First Avenger, just oh, they've got history.
Literal and figurative history. Yes.
Yeah. Can I also say setting it in a time that is real to me rather than current day makes it seem realer. And that sounds very stupid because maybe Hydra was in the war, maybe they weren't. You don't know. But it just
Danny, do you think modern times, do you think we're living in a simulation right now?
The Matrix, man, since 1998. Come on.
Yeah.
Wake up, people.
1940.
Never mind. No, because in the new movies, they're well, especially Doctor Strange. What was that? That wasn't real times. And so I felt so out of my element in that movie because I was like, I don't know what's going on. But at this part, I'm like, oh, yeah.
I see where you're coming from because there's a sense of time where, even the Marvel comics, I think, are like that. Is it's always it's the modern day, or and so the modern day is this amorphous, weird thing. That to some degree, futuristic stuff like Star Trek has more of a sense of time because it's the original series is we got dials from the 60s. Obviously, this is 1960 pretending to be the future, right? While the amorphous present day, doesn't feel as real. So yeah, I agree with you on some level, at least on that.
Well, thank you.
I identify a lot with because I've always been about the Supermans and the Captain Americas and the idea of you mentioned part of Danny, or just the idea of it's not him being big and strong that makes him win.
Not at all.
In fact,
yeah.
And I have always, and I think a lot of people probably feel the same way too, but want to be able to give more, wish that I had more strength to do things that I can't do, and there's things in the world that I want to help out with that it's if only I could be injected and just, be the physical specimen that he becomes, kind of thing. And so that to me is a big piece of it too, that I definitely know that I identify with. And then also the sort of goodness and the always caring for, what is sort of morally right. And then as you get into the later movies, because I was watching Winter Soldier recently, like he he'll question sort of his own beliefs in terms of what is morally right. And then the other piece to that is that like he didn't want to necessarily lead. He was happy to serve, and if that just meant that he was on a stage doing bail or getting war bonds and has like no experience whatsoever acting. And I love that like in the montage they kind of show him awkwardly having to read the script off of his shield, feeling really uncomfortable. And over time he gets used to it, but he like gets put into this position that he never really wanted to do. And that's something I feel like personally I've been dealing with lately, especially trying to not step into leadership roles just because I've been asked, but it's because like I'm not Captain America. I don't have the undying strength and everything to do that. So I don't know. I'm curious what you all think about all of that I just unloaded on.
I wonder if that's
So actually what you just described is kind of what makes Captain America a great servant leader. Dani mentioned this earlier, that he's the one that jumps on the grenade, and that's always what is great about Captain America. And part of the reason I'm really happy that we got to write about Captain America as a servant leader, I think there's a lot of writing about servant leadership that doesn't really serve the theory very well. But I think Captain America is a great example for people to kind of say, like, yeah, this is the person that I can totally see following, because he maybe he's not right all the time, but he's at least trying to do the morally correct thing. And at the very least, that he's got your back. And I think that's very resonant for us now. And you'll notice that the cornier characters that we think of as superheroes. So you mentioned Superman, Captain America, some of those classic characters, they're built on that corny idea that there's a guy who has some power, but it's not his power that makes them a good leader. It's that they have the power and they're using it in the right way. And I always think about the scene where Steve Rogers is sitting with Stanley Tucci's Dr. Erskine, and Dr. Erskine tells him, like, no, I need you to stay the same. I need you to remember what it's like to be this little guy who gets this power. And that's always been, I'm not, you can't tell on the podcast, I've never been the biggest guy. I'm way short.
You look jacked, I don't know what you're talking about.
I look huge, I look jacked, but there's something resonant, especially among comic book nerds, about seeing somebody who is that 98-pound weakling. They get the power and then they're still doing the right thing. There's something very resonant about that. And I think Gordon and I talked a little bit about that when we were writing the chapter, about how many people like want leadership roles, they get them, and then they're not great. They're, and you'll notice that there's like a parallel path between Peggy and Steve in this movie, where they both have to like earn roles, even though they're great at them. They have to always prove themselves. And I also think that's a very resonant factor, with regards to servant leadership, is that they're putting themselves second, and they're putting the mission and other people first. And that's what's driving their success as leaders.
Very well said.
Yeah. Gordon, do you want to add on to that? Or?
Yeah. I think, I think that's something that is really appealing about how Chris Evans plays it and how the movie plays it as well, is just that you really feel like he's a good person that wants to have a positive impact. He talks about standing up to the bully and that type of thing. I think that's well set up in World War II, which is one of the, to some degree, few wars and things where you really can just be like, there's good guys, there's bad guys, right? Yeah. Where there's a lot more tinging or disagreement on a lot of other areas of what was, right or wrong. People, well, it used to be everybody thought Hitler was bad. I wish more people still felt that way. I still think most people think Hitler's bad. I would even thought to say that, a few years ago, but where we are. But it's much more clear cut of that. It makes sense for what, he wants to help. There's the bad guy. I'm going to help out. And I think that that's something that works really well here. I think with the movie too, setting it in World War II, where we can just see him kind of getting this power and then using it for good and being focused on the moment, I think is really helpful. As I think I mentioned earlier, I was rereading the Avengers, the first 100 issues recently, and I'm reading more. Is that when Cap comes back from being frozen, he's very whiny. You know, oh, everyone I know is 15 years older. You know, and you know, Bucky is dead, and you know, I'm a man out of there. The Avengers treat him as if he's really old, when in fact time stopped for him. You know, he's not a 20-year veteran of war. He's a 5-year and then sleep for 20-year veteran. You know, so he gets service time, maybe time and a half for being frozen for 20 years, but he didn't do it right. He didn't develop new skills in the ice that I know of. I don't know. Maybe this is a new program to use. 20 years in a block of ice, 10 years of new skills. That sounds annoying, really, but could be useful. And so it's nice to have him just be focused on sort of developing, becoming this hero, and sort of being ready, getting him to a point for the future movies. And I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't do nearly as much of him being like, I'm out of time and everyone I know is dead. You know, there's some of it, but it's not this all-encompassing characterization. And that's kind of the characterization, I think, of the comics that I think Cap gets to that's really good, is this idea of him being something like that servant leader, of him having these skills and knowledge and ability to inspire. And that's why he's a leader of the Avengers and these things, rather than he's just kind of a mopey dude who everyone he knows is old now. To me, that's not nearly as interesting as kind of him as a good person struggling with things and inspiring people and really, you know, trying to have a positive impact, which I think is, you know, more important and valuable. Most of us will not be frozen in a block of ice for 70 years, maybe 20. But, you know, a lot of us do struggle with that. How do we make an impact on the world we have around?
Can I say, Gordon, you kind of touched on this, of like the reason that Captain America is a good leader is because he's standing up to the bullies. And I didn't realize that his catchphrase started when he was a wee little boy, and when he's first getting the crap beat out of him, he just says, I could do this all day. And that is something that Stanley Tucci was like, stay the same person. And truly, throughout the entire MCU, he has kept that catch. He's like, this is me standing up to the bullies. I can do this all day. And I'm glad you guys made me watch this, because a lot more things make sense now.
She's like, oh, I get why people care about this character in Endgame.
Yeah, I was like, why does everyone like Cap? But can I say one thing I hated about this movie, since we're talking about hate, you know, that's this portion?
Okay.
His freaking little body. Oh. The way that they made that was weird. I feel like there's a better way.
I have a note that said it held up. I thought
I don't know.
The shrimpification, I was watching
shrimpification.
I thought they did a great job. There's only one or two scenes where it looks like it's a floating head. Otherwise, I thought it was brilliantly done.
Yeah, he was a hobbit who made good. That's what
I do think that special effect holds up. I think it helps that some of those special effects are happening in the 40s, because our expectation of what those look like is a little bit different. So I think that definitely holds up.
Right, because this movie was made in the 40s.
Sure. I mean, I
don't know if I agree. I'm trying to think through this whole. If it looks like it's from the 40s, the special effects should look like they're from. Maybe I've never thought about. Sai, you got me stumped. I don't know how I feel.
Oh, very good, very good. Dani, any other thoughts that you had that you knew you wanted to mention?
Okay, I'm gonna keep sexualizing Captain America real quick. So when he realizes that he has muscles, like he gets muscles, but he doesn't stop, because he's like, oh, there's trouble afoot, and then he starts running, and then he's like, oh. Wow. Like that moment where he realizes that he can do so much more physically, I just love. That was very like genuine. And he doesn't even stop to be like, damn, I'm hot. He's like, no, there is a child in danger and I must go. I love that part.
Well, and I think Chris Evans plays that really well. That sort of that shock and surprise of, oh my gosh, this is what I'm capable of. But then also just like, well, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it right now, moments after it's happened to me.
And when Peggy Carter, you told me this, it was not scripted, or he comes out of the little case thing, and she's like, and like tries to touch him. That was not a scripted moment. She just was like, I really want to touch Chris Evans, and I was like, I understand that.
She represents all women at that point, I think, that wish to, touch him.
Yeah.
Not just women. I am a straight man, and even I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I think if I was in that scenario, I would not be able to resist. I mean,
are the early Marvel movies more horny? Because that's what I think about from Thor. Is just people are like, damn.
Oh yeah.
I think it's up there. The female character is just like that guy. So it's interesting. We got sort of two straight-ish movies that are just like the male lead. Look at that dude.
Yeah. Yep.
my wife is rendered speechless because she's thinking too much on Chris Evans' abs,
baby,
glistening in the oil that they put him in for sweat out.
I could do this all day.
Nick, I should have told you that you're supposed to cover your wife's eyes during some of these scenes, because I've already convinced my wife that it's not physically possible for a regular guy to achieve that body. So.
He said the first Chris Evans with a CGI being smaller is a real person. The rest is all
everything else has been CG since. No, I've missed that boat. Movie lovers, fans of this podcast have probably heard me tell this anecdote too many times, but the 4K television, the way I got Dani on board to understand why I was excited about the detail was Thor Ragnarok. And I had watched many movies, and she's like, whatever. And then we watched Thor Ragnarok on Ultimate HD, and she went, oh.
His arms.
I get it.
Sorry.
It's all right. I did think there was some fun stuff in here, though. I like some of the writing. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit already, but the character development, I think I forget how much and how good, and this is where I think the MCU succeeded. The character development that's done in a lot of these early pieces. Like, there's a lot more to it, and as you've said, Dani, like, they kind of do that in the one movie. And then they assume that you have seen it, and most of what happens to him in future movies doesn't matter as much to you unless you have already seen his movies.
Yeah.
Or read all the comic books. And Gordon keeps talking about how there's you said 50 bad ones. I'm good for you for sticking with it.
They go by pretty quick. It's not like reading a novel. So luckily, bad issues go like that.
Bedtime reading, and I just send Cy all the stupid panels.
It's actually more entertaining than you would think. Like, some of the stuff from the 60s is like, wow.
Other characters, I mean, you guys mentioned Bucky. I didn't know the importance of Bucky. And to be fair, Bucky doesn't do a heck of a lot in this movie. He tries to be. Oh, you're all giving me a dirty look. Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
I agree with you. I agree with you entirely.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I remember watching The Winter Soldier, and it had been years since I saw the first Avenger. The first time I watched Winter Soldier, and I literally was like, "Wait, what guy? Oh, that was the. Like, to me, I didn't feel that connection, and even rewatching it this time.
To me, Bucky is an Easter egg in this. You're like, oh yeah, Bucky. He's famous in the comics, and he came back. Right? He has no value in this movie. Sorry, Bucky, from this movie, but I don't care about the character, really.
He's very average. He's good looking, but then he gets real upset because he's like, well, I'm not the hottest one in the room anymore. And then he jumps off a train.
He jumps off a train.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, not being the hottest one in the room is a common problem that I've experienced. So I understand wanting to jump off a train when that happens.
Very relatable. Very relatable.
Like, where's the exit? Sure, the train is moving, but I'm getting off now. I actually one of the biggest changes that they made is in the comics, Bucky is a teenager, and he's like one of the teen sidekicks of the time period. So one of the best things that they did was they aged Bucky up and made him a soldier before Steve becomes a soldier. So I think that's really good. But they plant the seeds of that bromance over time, and it starts in this movie. So they have good chemistry together, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you do see that he wants to help Bucky. Bucky wants to help Steve. He's the only one that's still nice to him, even though he's a little guy who can't get into the army, and he's tried so many times, and that again shows heart, because he's like, I'm just gonna keep changing my address even though it's illegal because I want to help.
He's got that grit.
Yeah, he was fine. Bucky was fine.
Let's see, what other notes do I have?
And I don't remember who said it, but you said this was the best love story in the MCU. I concur, because the ending it's truly heartbreaking. because you're like, you feel their love and their chemistry so much. Their kiss when they're in the moving vehicle, and then Tommy Lee Jones is like, "You're not getting a kiss from me."
That was a great line.
Yeah.
Or I'm not kissing you, or whatever he said. I laughed. But yeah, then they love each other so much, and he promises to come back, and then he sacrifices himself, allegedly.
Like a good servant leader.
I will say,
Yeah, if we want to get to the hate part of the movie, I don't like the villain aspects overall in this movie.
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention him.
It just, like, Red Skull
Which
is a
says
very
something.
good character in a theoretical sense, but not in this movie very well. His leadership style is really the twirling mustache. I kill my own people more than, and he's not even killing people when it's like they made a mistake. He's like, let's blow up the base right now, or I'm going to shoot this guy. I was talking to Sai about this. They've got this movie where the Nazis come and they're like, hey, why do you have this map where you're going to bomb Berlin? And he's like, we are going to bomb Berlin. And then he kills like his Nazi handlers, and then some large number of months pass and nobody cares or calls them out. Like, there's no reason for that scene. It doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
But it's just way over the top. I don't know. There's a weird distancing of trying to distance the Marvel Nazis from the Nazis, because the Nazis are bad while Red Skull, I guess, is a cool dude who just wants to kill everyone and take over the world. Like, it's just weird to be like, oh, don't worry, he doesn't really like Nazis. He does care about racial purity and just the Red Skull, but he ain't a Nazi. Don't worry about it. Which I don't know. I'm not sure why that's their belief structure.
That's basically what you're getting.
I always thought that they were trying to show that he was worse than the Nazis because he just indiscriminately killed them. That was always my take, and that made me uncomfortable. I was like,
my feeling always, if you kill Nazis, you're the good guy. So Red Skull has to be a good guy. It's a weird thing to feel, but
yeah, his face reveal was wild to me, because he gets hit in the face and then just a little bit of his red eye. I thought that was cool, and I was like, that's gross. And then he peels his whole dang face off, and I said, oh, that guy was in that other movie that
See what I mean?
he was on the clip. He killed Black Widow. And also that was, did anyone else get Star Wars vibes? Very much like they're on a bridge, an electrical bridge, a metal bridge, and there's like red stuff underneath, and then he's like, yeah, I am your father.
I remember you saying something like that to
so
me, and I did
Star
not
Wars
feel it
to
at
me.
all when we were watching.
Going back to the end, it's truly heartbreaking, but it was very reminiscent of Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah,
Like the same ending.
yeah,
And I was sobbing in that movie at the end too. But
I think I remember telling you that, and you were like, "What? How? I don't remember seeing that in the Captain America movie." And now I know why you didn't remember. Yeah, no, it's very similar to Wonder Woman. Very similar to Wonder Woman.
and I thought Wonder Woman, I know this isn't MCU, but was the best DC movie.
I actually think Wonder Woman did that part better too.
Fair.
That is a spicy hot take. I think I don't think Wonder Woman did it better. I think Wonder Woman has some really good qualities to it. I think they do some of the fish out of water stuff, comedy stuff a little bit better. But I think Captain America owns that moment. That ending moment, because they set it up really, really, really well. Like, especially because Steve Rogers is such a nerd. Like, he doesn't even know how to talk to a woman, right? And he finally has a shot, and you're just like, he's not gonna get it. He's not gonna make it. And then the reveal at the end is like, well, even in the tag when he's revived, the first thing he thinks about is being with this girl. He's like, I had a date, and now he doesn't. So it's very, that part of it I think works a little bit better than in Wonder Woman.
Well, because Captain America survives, though. Chris Pine.
Well, we've seen Wonder Woman 84, so depends on where
That's
you want
not
to take that.
that movie's not real.
We don't talk about Wonder Woman 1984 here.
We don't talk about.
Yeah, we don't.
Totally agree. In my headcanon, it doesn't exist.
It sucks.
But anyway, Gordon, Sai, is there anything else you sort of were just dying or really think about every time you rewatch this movie, or something that struck out to you this rewatch about the movie, something you wanted to bring up that we haven't brought up yet?
I think there are a couple of things that I really thought about a lot while I was watching it this time, or things that stick out. Number one, for a soldier, and a character that's often characterized as a soldier, Captain America is not very good at following orders. So I think they capture that part of it very, very well, where he follows some orders, when he's not really sure what he's supposed to do. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do this, Hollywood musical thing for a little bit. But they do a great job of capturing the essence of Captain America, which is, he represents more than the actual country, right? He really represents that American ideal, the kind of thing that we wish we were.
Sure.
He really represents that, and that Chris Evans really leans into that and captures that very, very well in this movie. So that's always stuck out to me, because trying to lay easy patriotism on Captain America, both in the movie and in the comics, is hard, because he's always striving for that higher ideal. So I think that's a big part of what makes him also a great servant leader and great leader. The reason that people follow him is that he's not just saying okay, this is what we're doing, whatever America says we're going to do. He's like, no, we're going to do what's right. And that really represents what I think most Americans wish we were, more than anything else. Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, for me, just watching the movie, just thinking of the lens of IO psychology and leadership was even more salient this time than the first time I saw it. But one thing I really thought about was training in this movie, because he goes from he gets jacked, he's got the muscles, right, and then he does the USO shows that are physical, but they're not related to tactics or fighting. And then Bucky gets captured behind enemy lines, and he's like, hey, I've had no training in fighting, no training in tactics. I'm going behind enemy lines and breaking everybody out. I don't know if I'm immune to bullets or anything. Who knows? I'm just going to do it. And to me, that just felt, this time it really felt like, this doesn't make any sense. Because in the comics, it's like, oh, he's fighting. But he doesn't really have experience, and then he does this big thing. Which to me, it would have been good to be like, oh, well, he is training or he's doing this. And we do act a lot like Cap is like a great military mind.
Sure.
But he doesn't, especially in this movie, he doesn't do a lot of military stuff. There's some montage after he does this big breakout, which again, he's not prepared for. So maybe he gets training. But it's just kind of interesting thinking about the importance of training and experience, where even if you've got the power of Captain America to be like, he's got to infiltrate a base, get in there, break in, get the stuff, get people out. It's a pretty big leap as from an IO psychologist perspective to be like, oh yeah, he can just do everything perfectly. So I think the movie just brings you along and you don't think about it. I think with the book, we thought so much into these films too, where some of those things that just, it flows fine in the movie. And montages in movies, it means you train for the last 10 years, the montage, right?
Yeah.
But to really try to look at the timeline and think about it, it just is like, you're like, I don't believe it. I can believe a Red Skull, Cosmic Cube, Captain America, frozen in ice for 70 years. But
I believe
military
Rocky.
Training, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think Rocky montage rules apply, where if you're training in a montage, it's like a multiplier. Yeah. So no
montage before he does the thing while he's Captain America, though.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
True.
Training montage is fine.
There's a case. They put him in that metal case, and we don't know what happens in that case. That's where everything changes.
It uploaded his brain,
learning,
like the Matrix.
Because you don't see his face.
Military tactics.
You don't know.
Yeah, the only other thing I just wanted to touch briefly on what Sai was saying, because I think that if you watch the new, and it's got, I don't think it's as good as some other shows, but the Winter Soldier and Falcon and Winter Soldier show, they have a character, a U.S. agent, and I think I've heard or seen this comparison before, that character was created essentially to be what the U.S. is, whereas Captain America is what the U.S. wants to be or thinks it is or strives to be, and I think that's just such an apt comparison, especially in the society that we have today. And we should always be striving to be the better, striving to be the servant leader, striving to be the Captain America. But with that, I unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. So we need to get our heart ratings and whether or not you two would renew your vows. So the heart ratings, I at least try to have relatively objective 0 to 5 hearts in terms of your quality, how good you think the movie is. And then the would you renew your vows is a little bit more subjective. Like, would you revisit this movie? Do you think you're going to watch it again in the future? So I will go ahead and go first since I'm talking too much. And I'm going to give it, I think I'm probably going to give it a 4.5. While we were talking about it, and Gordon, you've convinced me on some of the things that are maybe holes in it. I was waddling before between 4.5 or 4.75. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 hearts. But I would definitely renew. I am certain that I will watch this movie again, probably with my future children, and also just at some point before I have them, probably. Dani?
Yes, I will also. No, I'll give it a 4 out of 5 because it's not my favorite Marvel movie. Ant-Man. Gordon, I know you liked Ant-Man.
Great movie. I love Ant-Man.
Best
Ant-Man
Marvel movie
one.
there is. Because I think it's shockingly better than I thought it was because I truly thought I saw it before. So I learned a lot watching it. I enjoyed my eyes were happy the whole time, except for the beginning. And it had a really cute love story. And I stan a Peggy Carter spin-off reboot. We know that she existed in another universe. I still would like her to be Peggy Carter somewhere.
There is a series, although it is not largely accepted as true MCU canon, but Agent Carter was a very good show, especially the first season, in my opinion.
Oh, is it the same actress?
Yep.
Oh, never mind.
I'm gonna show her that. Gordon, what would you give it rating and would you renew?
I was thinking about 3.8. You know, I think it's
he didn't pick this movie.
I think it's a little below 4, and I don't round up. The students you got to round up. They'll eat you alive if you don't round them up. But I think the movie. So I think it does. Chris Evans does a great setup here. Peggy Carter is great. I wish the villain story was better because I don't think the villains are bad actors. It's just kind of story-wise, it's a little weird to me. I think the setting is really cool, and I would like to see more of the setting in various ways as well. Things like, Tony Stark's dad and all of that is pretty interesting. And so it's an interesting area, and it's a very specific film. I think this is a Marvel film you remember because it's unique and doing its own thing, while movies that might technically be better just wash together more because they don't have that visual hook on it. So that's what I would say.
All right, I think so. I will go 4.8 on this because I'm a sucker. Yeah, because I'm a sucker for the classic heroes. So I like Superman. I love the Rocketeer. So I'm also in the bag for Joe Johnston. And generally, I think I'm pretty easygoing on Marvel movies because I remember an era when these movies were not nearly as good as they are now. So I'm very appreciative. But I also think this movie gets hurt by the fact that the Cap movies are way better on average. Winter Soldier I think is very, very good. Civil War, which I have some issues with, is very, very good. If anybody told me in 1998 that that the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe were going to be Captain America movies, after seeing the Roger Corman produced Captain America movie, I would tell them you're out of your mind. But these movies are way better than they have any reason to be. And I really think that First Avenger kind of gets diminished because of those other movies. And I do think that this one, for what it is, does a really great job. I think there are some pretty great sequences. So, for example, that montage is awesome. I would love to see another whole movie where he's just fighting Nazis and Nazis, Hydra, take them all out. Let Captain America run wild. That would be great. And I think the central performances are very, very good. And I think there's some things that are real, kind of janky about the movie a little bit. Villain plot is not great. I really do feel like they wasted Hugo Weaving, despite his epic German accent. Right? Yeah. If he was if they could just put him in the drag queen outfit, it would just make things better. Yeah. That extra point too is because they didn't put him in the outfit. I think overall, I think it's a really good time. I do expect to rewatch it. I think this might be one of the more kid-friendly, despite the fact that Sonny gets chopped up by a helicopter blade in this. I think it's the most
that's actually
kid-friendly.
Indiana Jones. Sorry.
That's direct ripoff of Indiana Jones, right? I do think that this is maybe the most kid-friendly one, so I can see, my son and I watching this pretty soon. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to revisit these. And this is a good. A lot of the MCU movies are actually kind of fun to have on if you're washing dishes or doing something else. You just want something going on in the background.
Very good. All right. Well, that's it. That's everything we have for you, movie lovers. We really appreciate it. Before we give Gordon and Cy a chance to plug themselves, Dani, where can the listeners find you? And is there anything to plug that you have that's coming up?
Okay, for sure. You can follow me on Instagram at DaniMiami4 and find me at Comedy Sports Chicago. I do virtual shows every Wednesday and live shows every Thursday. So please come check us out.
And you can find me at Nic Loves Movies. That's NICLUV, Nic Loves Movies, on Instagram and Twitter. Come follow me there. We may have sometime in the next coming months some stuff about IO movie nights. So if you want to learn a little bit more about IO psychology and how it ties to movies, that's not yet fully in the bag, but there's no sort of agreements that I can't talk about wanting it to happen. So come follow me, and then maybe we'll get a chance to make it happen.
You should put this on your list.
There may or may not be conversations that people are having about those things as well. Also follow us in Love with Movies. That's at the letter N, Love with Movies, on Instagram and Twitter. And also now, brand new listeners, if you are interested, we have just started a Patreon where you will start to get some additional content there. Smaller things, certainly not full episodes or anything along those lines, but we will be very happy for you to give to us at any level that you can. Dani was cracking jokes about the expensive equipment that we record on and how it doesn't work all the time necessarily the way we expect it to. We're still trying to pay some of that stuff off. So if you want to help us to do that, if you enjoy us, we'd really appreciate anything you can give there. Otherwise, just go ahead and give us a follow. And the best thing that you can do is share us. Share this. Share us. If you enjoy any of this, share with somebody that you know. If you're somebody who really attaches to more of the love topics, let us know what you want to hear there. If you're somebody who, attaches more to the movies, share us with somebody who's a movie lover. Tell them that they can just skip ahead to the time code that we try to put into things. Whatever it is you like to do, sharing us out broad and wide is really the best thing that you could do as well. So that's enough of us plugging ourselves. I want to give the floor to Gordon and Cy to plug themselves. Where can our listeners find you? And then, of course, make sure to plug your book at least one more time.
All right, so you can find me mostly on Twitter at IOSyislam, IOSYISLAM. You can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/IN/SISLAM. Though my content on LinkedIn is pretty boring, I'd say. I don't really use Instagram very much, but you can also, check out my consulting company's website, talentmetrics.io. I blog there occasionally, and you can learn a little bit more about our book, Leaders Assemble: Leadership in the MCU. If you go to Amazon and type that in, or if you want to we have a tiny URL for that, so tinyurl.com/AmazonMCU, all lowercase, so you can get that directly. And we'd love for you to check out the book. Tell us what you think. If you get a chance to read it, please reach out to us. We would love to talk about it. I don't know if everybody can tell, but we're really passionate about it. Gordon?
Yeah. So I think Cy hit the book pretty well. Certainly, if you've got questions on anything, or you want to read it in your book club or buy it for your series of libraries or your 50 million friends, feel free to reach out. We can probably get you some help with that. On Twitter is probably the best way to find me. My Twitter ID is at IO Psychology. That is why you sign up for Twitter early, because then you get the whole name of your field.
I was about to say that's impressive, my friend. I always have been impressed.
It's a pretty big flex overall. But it's a pretty good handle to have. I am on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to add me there. I have relatively normal LinkedIn content. I've got more fun content on Twitter nowadays because I'm connected with a lot more comic-y people, which is interesting. Context collapse across things now that comics are both my fun and apparently professional is interesting. But so feel free to connect me through there. The other thing I will say is that Cy and I are working on a second book that's about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
leadership, which is a fantastic franchise for this. And you'll learn about a concept and we'll connect it to a particular episode. So read a chapter, watch the episode. Very easy to do. Some of these MCU movies get along, but it'd be very easy to pop these two things together. Read a chapter, watch an episode. So we're very excited about that. It's going to be a lot of different focusing more on balance, cross-cultural leadership, and things like that, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. So we've been working on that. For my research is mostly up on ResearchGate as well. If you want to look at anything too, I do a lot of stuff on leadership, the future of work related topics, corporate social responsibility. And I love sharing with people and talking about it. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or, if any consulting opportunities, anything you need help on, feel free to do so. So I think those are the things I'm hyping at the moment. So
love it. And I will say thank you for bringing up you all's next book that's coming. I hoped we were going to get a chance to plug that. It is coming out sometime in the future, but it's worth noting that is because this is all part of a series of books by Emerald Publishing.
There's a Star Wars book, there's a Middle Earth book, and there's a Harry Potter book. Harry Potter book's coming out very soon.
No, it came out already.
I don't think I knew about the Harry Potter one.
Very soon now, because it's out.
I have the Star Wars one. Obviously, I pre-ordered you all's Marvel one. So, listeners, if you're into these topics, or maybe you identify one of those other fandoms more than necessarily the Marvel Cinematic Universe, hey, check out one of those other books as well. They're not all written by Cy and Gordon, but they're in the same type of vein in terms of leadership stuff.
Yeah, they're fantastic books.
Yep, they're very good.
They're well worth reading.
The Leaders Assemble comes out about a week, maybe 10 days after this episode will be released. So if you're listening to this, movie lovers, that means you can go pre-order it right now. We will provide that tiny URL, and otherwise go ahead and just Google Leaders Assemble, and I'm sure you'll be able to find where it's available to purchase near you if you're listening more than 10 days after this is released. So with that, we love you, movie lovers. I love you, Dani.
I love you, Nick.
And we love you, Cy and Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
I could do this all day. Fun.
In love.